Hey everyone, welcome to the next video in this Blender beginners tutorial series where we model this isometric scene in Blender. So if you haven't watched the previous video, make sure to check that out. I'll link it in the description. Now let's continue where we left off in the last video. Okay, let's start this one by creating another photo frame. Let's select this one, press Shift D to create a duplicate, and X, press RZ 90, minus for minus 90 degrees, and G and Y. Maybe we can push this a little bit further like this. So okay, that looks good. Maybe we can move this above. So I'm kind of used to the shortcuts, that's why I'm not using the gizmo. So maybe we can push this even further, and let's drop this down a little bit. Now let's create a flower vase. So I have made a separate video on my channel to create a flower vase and a bit more complicated flower. I'll leave a link in the description, or you can just go to my channel's page and look for it. So let's quickly create a flower vase. Press Shift A, go to mesh, let's add a plane, press /2, enter the local space. Tab in edit mode, press A to select everything, and press M to bring in the merge menu and choose at center. So this will merge all these vertices into one vertex like this. So in case if you doesn't see the vertex, and that means you are in either edge mode or face mode, and that way you can't see the vertex. So make sure that you are in the vertex mode, so that way you can access the vertex. Now let's go to the modifiers tab and let's add a subdivision surface modifier. Let's add ×2, one for front view. Press E to extrude it out like this. So make sure that you are forming a bit of a flower vase profile like this. Now let's add a screw modifier. So this will create a nice flower vase like this. So make sure that you select this vertex, press G and X to slightly move it out, and press E to extrude and slightly close this in like this. Okay, that looks good. So make sure that your screw is above the subdivision. That looks fine. Maybe we can bring this a little bit down and slightly move this above like this, and select these two vertices by dragging and selecting, and right click and choose subdivide to create a bit more firm bottom for this vase, and press Ctrl R. Like adding another loop cut, you can add another vertex like this. So press G twice to slide this vertex down to crease this a little bit further. So that looks perfect. So right now the vase is a little bit paper thin, so let's add a solidify modifier to give some thickness for our vase, and make sure to move the solidify modifier above the subdivision. And let's check even thickness, and let's increase the thickness in the negative value so that it forms inside the vase. Maybe we can add another vertex down here and slightly move this in the x-axis and slightly in the z. Okay, it looks great. Let's apply the screw. Let's leave these two modifiers. Now select this bottom vertex and press M and choose at center. This will fix the extra vertices that you see. Now press /2 to exit the local space, and let's move this above the wooden drawer and scale this down, way down, and move this in the x-axis. So if I apply the scale, you can see the solidify modifier. I mean, you can actually continue without applying the scale and just get away with it. So just in case, I just want to show you what happens if you doesn't apply scale values. So you need to tweak down the solidify modifier a little bit. So let's settle down for -0.01. Okay, that looks good. Now let's create some flowers to put in the vase. Press Shift A, go to mesh, let's add a plane, /2, enter the local space, tab into edit mode, let's add a loop cut in the middle, press Ctrl B, and make sure that you have 3 loop cuts running across the mesh like this. Now let's add another liquid in the center. Press Ctrl B and let's stop right there. Now I'm going to select all these vertices, press M and choose at center. Let's do the same with this. Now let's select all these vertices, press S and scale it down in the x-axis. Now let's select these vertices and hold your shift and click and drag to select these vertices and press S and X to scale them in the x-axis. Now let's select all these three and slightly scale them in the x-axis like this. Let's also do the same for these vertices. Okay, that's looking good. Now press A to select everything and press E to extrude it out in the z-axis to give a bit of thickness for the leaves. Now let's select these three vertices. Okay, not this one, the one in the center, and press G and Z to slightly bring it down. So entering the X-ray mode using Alt Z and selecting these vertices. Let's turn on the proportional editing or press O for turning it on. Let's scroll your mouse to increase the fall off of this circle of influence, and let's press G and Z to push the leaf in the Z-axis slightly, and you can also scroll your mouse wheel a little bit in case if you want to increase the fall off. I think it's looking great. Now let's switch back to the object mode and let's press Ctrl 2 to add a subdivision surface modifier and right click on shade auto smooth to give the smooth shading. So in case if you are experiencing this kind of segmentation in your leaves, you can easily fix that by increasing the subdivision levels to 3 in the levels viewport and render to smooth out the leaf a little bit more. Maybe we can select all these leaves upper portion and make sure to select these also and press G and Z to slightly increase the thickness. Make sure to turn off the proportional editing if you want. Okay, let's shade smooth this one to get rid of this issue. Now let's use the leaf to create the flower petals. Press Shift D to create a duplicate of this and let's enter the edit mode. Let's enter the X-ray mode and let's bring these vertices in the y-axis like this, and let's select these one and press S and X to scale them slightly in the x-axis, and let's also do the same for these one. And finally, let's add a loop cut over here to refine the shape a little bit more. Now, whenever you create leaf, you should always place your origin point over here, so that will allow us to manipulate the leaves a little bit better. So I'm going to select this edge over here, Shift S to bring the selection menu and choose cursor to selector. This will bring the 3D cursor over to this edge. Go to the object mode, right click and set origin to 3D cursor. So you can easily manipulate the leaf or petal like this. So you know, that's much easier. So let's do the same over here. Cursor to selector, tab into object mode, right click, set origin to 3D cursor. Press Shift A, let's go to curve. So let's add a path curve. So these are not like usual mesh objects. So curves, they are kind of vector objects, but still we can use this as a mesh. Press R, Y, 90. Tab into edit mode. Let's select these two vertices, press X and delete them. Now let's select this middle one, press G and Y, not Y, X. Slightly move this out to create a bit of band. Now let's extrude this in like this. And slightly move this in the y-axis like this, you know, to create a bit of visual interest for this curve. So come to the curve properties down here and under the geometry, let's increase the depth to give it a bit of thickness and tab into object mode, select this vertex, press Alt S. So you can only scale this using Alt S to increase or decrease the thickness, or you can just select everything and press S to scale this as a whole. So use Alt S to scale a single vertex. Now I'm going to mount these petals above this curve object. To create a flower, obviously press Alt T to create a link duplicate and press R, Z and move it something like this. Now press Shift R to repeat that action. So it's not really working, so I'm going to manually adjust these. Yeah, Maybe we can slightly rotate this in the y-axis to give it a bit of depth. That looks good. Now press Shift S and cursor to selector to bring the 3D cursor over here. Press Shift A, go to mesh, let's add a cube, scale this down, and press Ctrl 3 to add 3 levels of subdivision. Let's also go to the modifier tab and let's increase the level of subdivision in the render for 3. Press tab to enter edit mode, select everything, and press S to scale it up to create the polygon. Now select this bottom face, press X and delete these faces. Now let's select these edges and push it in the z-axis. Now let's shade auto smooth. Let's select all these, select this one, press Ctrl P and choose object to parent everything to this one. So in case if you want to clear parent for this object, you can press Alt P and choose clear parent. So if you have done any kind of transformations and you want to keep that, you can choose clear and keep transformation. So that will do. Now let's select this leaf, press G and move it up. So scale this in like this. Align it with the stem. Now press Alt D to create a link duplicate. Press G and Z, moving it down. R, Z, and move slightly, rotate this in the alternate direction. And let's give it a bit of random rotation like this. Yeah, that works. Now let's select these two and finally this, and press Ctrl P and choose object to parent these as well. Now let's select everything. Press / to exit the local space and press S to scale it down. So we don't actually need to worry about the scaling because we have only applied the subdivision surface modifier. So that's fine. Okay, now let's select everything, and I'm going to create a linked duplicate of this one. Press S to scale it down. You know, this flower is a little bit lonely, so I'm going to create something for this. Maybe we can slightly rotate this in the y-axis and place it like this one. Okay, Alt D, let's okay, enough with the tweaking. Now let's select this vase and press Shift D to create a duplicate, and let's place it over here. Just to scale it down. Maybe we can slightly change the shape of this vase. Select this edge and use the proportional editing. Press S and Shift Z. Create a bit of variant. Okay, now this is totally different from this one. Now let's create a duplicate using Shift D and move it in the y-axis. This time let's squish this in the z-axis. I'm kind of a pottery master right now. Maybe we can press Ctrl X to. Okay, that looks great. Let's create one more. This time let's scale this in the Shift Z and bring these down. Okay, that looks good. So we have successfully filled these spaces. Maybe we can increase the overall space. Remember the individual origin pivot point. Use that to scale these guys. Ctrl S to save your progress, guys. Don't forget to do that. Now I think we have reached end for the modeling. Maybe in the next video let's texture and light this one. For this video I'm gonna stop right here. Okay guys, that's it for this video. Let's continue the rest in the next part. Make sure to get to this point and don't skip anything. In case if you have any doubts, please leave them in the comment section down below and I'll do my best to answer them. And if you find this tutorial useful, Please like this video and subscribe to this channel for more future contents, and hit the bell icon to get notified instantly when I release them. That will be for this video. I'll see you on the next one. Take care. Bye bye.